Hey, how's it going, everybody? I want to give you guys a recap video as to how I traded AMD as well as Tesla today. So I'm probably going to throw a screenshot up here in about a second on my Robin account of the contracts I entered and the time I entered versus exited. So let's talk about my entry, right? So what did I see and why did I pick AMD, right? So what is the reasoning as to the stock that I'm picking to trade for the session, right? Because when you go into every single day that you want to trade, you should have somewhat of a directional bias as to where you want to see it go. And how do you gain a directional bias? It's more so, number one, I just kind of saw that we gapped up heavily in pre-market. I think we gapped about 9% in pre-market. Let me check. Yeah, we gapped about 8% in pre-market on AMD, and I saw that because we got a gap up, and yesterday was a red day. So you can see to the right chart right here, this is a red day, right? So red day here, gap up, and this is considered a gap over red setup, meaning that we gapped over yesterday's high, right? So not only did we only gap over yesterday's high, but we gapped over yesterday's high, and yesterday was a red day, right? So typically when you have a red day, that means it was a bearish day, right? So when reading basic candlestick patterns, this was the candle open, this was the candle close on the right side, and we ended up closing red in the session. So following today, we did catch a big gap up, and you have to understand when you typically catch gap ups on a day, especially when the priority is red, think about it. Everyone is short, right? So people are short, and when you gapped up, people are forced to cover their shorts. So in theory, the price will squeeze to the upside. So gap over red days, in short, is a bullish setup. So now let's talk about how did I get into the trade, right? So like, how did I figure out my reasoning for getting into the trade? Like, what got me into the position? Right, so when taking a look at this chart, so I'm gonna mark the opening print, which is this level right here. So turn this off. Let's turn off the price. All right, so let's mark this out as a nice thick green line for us. So this is the opening print right here, right? So when we first opened, I saw that there were potential levels that I was watching, which is 215.83s. There's also 208.58s, and there was 203.82s. In theory, for me, because I want to target the most recent level, right? So the most recent resistance point or pivot high or swing high I would have is this overnight high, right? So ideally, that is my target ultimately, but I just have to find my way in, right? So like, how am I gonna find the way into the chart? What is gonna be my entry, like criteria for entering in? So personally, for me, when I like to trade stocks, because when you're playing calls or puts, you're kind of playing in a direction, right? So we're not doing any type of spreads, any type of butterfly spreads where we're trying to trap price into a specific area. We're more so playing in a direction, and that's how I personally like to trade. I'm okay with range bound trading. I like trend trading more. So I'll give you guys a breakdown as to how I see this now, right? So initially, how I saw was that we opened up here at 211.64. We pulled back to this hourly level I have at 208.59, and we had a failure to go lower pattern, meaning that once we tagged this support level, right, we failed to break lower and we continuously broke higher. I did attempt a contract in long, but I ended up cutting it off quickly when I saw that we just were unable to get back above the opening print. But as I allowed more price and more action to develop, and I saw that if you look on the 5 minute time frame here, right? So if you just take a look zoomed in, you can see that we did set in a low, right? We then set in another potential higher low, right? Once this level here broke, so once we broke out of this most recent high, this higher low was confirmed, pulled back, we ended up creating another high low, right? Meaning that you can see that that most recent low, this was the most recent low right here, and we just created higher lows to the upside. So pulled back, higher low, and I believe I ended up getting around 210s area. I will check my Robinhood to see when I entered the contracts, but I believe I got in around 210 area, and I ended up targeting this 1 hour level above us, which is this 215.83s. So once we ended up breaking to the upside, and we broke out the first hour's high, I was targeting this 215.83 area. So my first initial takeoff for this trade, I believe, was I took off a contract. I want to say here. We'll check the fill times, but I ended up taking off a contract when we did pump to the upside, and then I ended up taking off my final contract, basically for around the same amount of profit when we ended up breaking. When we had this like bearish 5 minute bar here, when I saw this kind of nasty bar, I was like, okay, we could have set in the high of day now because we failed to have a strong hold of this 215.83 area. So that was just kind of in my eyes like, oh, the trade's possibly over at this point. We have earnings for Nvidia tomorrow, so AMD could move in favor of whatever the positive earnings for Nvidia. Then we probably retire. If it's negative, then we probably rip lower. But because this is a day trade, I liked the odds of just taking it off and looking for another trade essentially. So one more thing I want to also mention out, right, is that what was the risk reward for this trade? Because it entered around 210s and I was risking 2 860s, which was my hourly level here. I was risking essentially around 2 points, and then let's say 210s to 227, right? That's essentially around 16, 17 points to the upside. So I'm risking $3 to the downside for 16, 17 points to the upside. Yes, I kind of knew that because the average trading range just isn't that great on AMD, unless we had another catalyst push us to the upside in this session, we probably wouldn't have hit that target. But at the end of the day, I like my odds, and because I'd rather have a bigger next pivot as my area of resistance than to just have like a 1 or 2 point target. So essentially, you can see I took it from 210s to 215s, took about 40% on these contracts, about $5 move to the upside. 210s area was going to risk about $2 or maybe $3 tops to the downside. So 2 to 1, one risk to 2 reward essentially. So that was a pretty good trade, right? And then one more thing I want to go about today is how did I trade Tesla, right? What did I see in Tesla to get me into this long? So let's mark out the opening print. So opening print is right here. Opening print, by the way, is essentially the first price that the stock trades at market open. So that varies per stock. Okay, so opening print, right? So what did I see in Tesla? So the number one thing I saw was that for Tesla, we opened inside of yesterday's range. So because we opened inside yesterday's range on stocks, majority of stocks, there's about an 80% chance based off of the edge flow stats that we do tag the priority high or priority low as an intraday target, basically, right? So I have this little indicator for myself that built that says inside range, priority high is my target essentially, right? So how did I trade this? So what I looked for was that I looked for an initial rally, and once we pulled back from that rally, so we rallied to the upside, pulled back, and I ended up entering around here on the break of this prior candle's high for a upside rally towards priority high. So you can see I literally went from level to level. So I let the initial trend set. So when I look, what my criteria again is, I look for the trend, right? What is the trend? Intraday trend is bullish, holding above the opening print. We're inside yesterday's range. Qs at this time, the Nasdaq was rallying to the upside. We pulled back, nice little pullback here, set in a bullish bar. And once we set this bullish bar, this is basically like a rally pullback long to the upside, right? And because the odds was like 80% chance on Tesla hitting Friday high, that was essentially my target. And I took it all off there. I'll probably throw up a screenshot right about now on that fill of however I executed the trade. And yeah, you can see literally right after we tagged the Friday high, we had a pullback, a pretty strong pullback. Don't really love buying or holding through these moves. Essentially, it's better to just sell the contracts when they're popping because the premiums are spiked. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that trade review. I will potentially continuously upload trade reviews here and there, market outlooks, as well as how I build some of my indicators in the near future. And I hope to see you guys next time. Thanks, guys.